I'm Miranda, 35, and tonight my world imploded when my parents casually announced over dinner that they've transferred our family restaurant to my sister Diana. 15 years of my life dedicated to this business, working from dishwasher to manager, all while Diana pursued fashion in New York. When I expressed shock, my father shrugged and said, "Diana needs stability now." The restaurant was supposed to be mine someday. That promise died tonight along with my trust. As I watched Diana's smug smile, I knew one thing: this betrayal wouldn't stand. If you've ever felt the sting of family betrayal or watched something you worked for handed to someone else, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you've experienced similar family business drama. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I transformed this devastating betrayal into the best decision I never knew I needed to make. Trust me, the family karma in this story is worth sticking around for. To understand the magnitude of my parents' betrayal, you need to know the history of our family business, Seaside Delights. This wasn't just any seafood restaurant in coastal Massachusetts. It was my grandfather Robert's legacy. He built it from nothing 50 years ago, starting with just 8 tables and a passion for fresh seafood. I grew up hearing stories about how he would wake up at 4 in the morning to meet the fishing boats, personally selecting each catch before most people had their first cup of coffee. When Grandpa Robert handed the restaurant to my father James and mother Eleanor 25 years ago, it was already a local institution. The restaurant walls were covered with photos of celebrity visitors, newspaper clippings, and thank you letters from generations of customers who celebrated their most precious life moments at our tables. One entire wall was dedicated to first date, engagement, wedding, photos of couples whose relationships blossomed over our famous clam chowder. My earliest memories are set within those walls. While other kids played with toys, I played restaurant. By age 8, I was folding napkins into perfect swans. By 12, I knew every recipe in our family cookbook by heart. At 15, I was officially on the payroll, working weekends and summers, learning every position from dishwasher to host. The restaurant wasn't just a business to me. It was home. After high school, I made my first major sacrifice for Seaside Delights. I turned down a full scholarship to Cornell's hospitality program because the restaurant was going through a rough patch during the economic downturn. "We need you here, Miranda," my father said. "Education can wait. Family comes first." So I stayed, working 60-hour weeks to help keep our doors open while my friends left for college adventures. My sister Diana, younger by 5 years, couldn't have been more different. While I was learning inventory management, she was winning fashion design competitions. While I worked holidays, she was traveling through Europe for inspiration. When she announced she was moving to New York at 18 to pursue fashion, my parents threw her a lavish going-away party and helped finance her apartment. When I asked about taking a 2-week vacation after working 7 years without one, my father said, "The restaurant needs you, Miranda. Maybe next year." Don't misunderstand me. I was proud of Diana's ambition and talent. But the stark difference in how our choices were treated never escaped my notice. My dedication was expected. Her pursuits were celebrated. Despite this, I poured my heart into Seaside Delights. I modernized our reservation system, created a popular Instagram account that brought in younger customers, and developed seasonal menus that kept our regulars excited year-round. For years ago, I convinced my parents to invest in renovating our outdoor seating area into a stunning deck with ocean views. That investment paid for itself within 6 months as our summer revenue increased by 30%. Diana visited perhaps twice a year, usually around Christmas and sometimes in the summer if she had a break between fashion shows. During these visits, my parents treated her like visiting royalty. "Diana's here," they'd announce to the staff, as if we should all stop what we were doing. Meanwhile, I was running the daily operations, handling employee issues, managing vendor relationships, and ensuring every customer left happy. 3 years ago, I met Trevor, a marine biologist working at the local aquarium. Our relationship blossomed, but I was always careful to balance it with my work responsibilities. We postponed trips countless times because the restaurant needed me.
Trevor understood, or at least he tried to.
The restaurant will be yours someday, he would remind me when I felt overwhelmed. Everything you're building now is for your future. That thought kept me going through 80-hour work weeks during tourist season, through missed friends' weddings, through postponing having children because the timing was never right. Every sacrifice was an investment in my future, a future my parents had implicitly promised me since childhood. Last year, I presented my parents with a comprehensive 5-year plan for Seaside Delights. It included opening a second location in a neighboring town, launching a line of packaged sauces for retail, and creating a catering division. My father seemed impressed, patting my shoulder and saying, "This is exactly why the restaurant will be in good hands with you someday." I cannot overstate how clear it was to everyone, staff, regular customers, local vendors, and me, that I was being groomed to take over. Staff members often referred to me as the future boss in casual conversation. Customers would tell my parents how lucky they were to have a daughter so dedicated to continuing the family legacy. Diana, meanwhile, experienced several setbacks in her fashion career. Her initial success with a small collection was followed by a failed partnership and investment loss. During her visits home, she started showing more interest in the restaurant, asking questions about revenue and property values. At the time, I interpreted this as her finally appreciating what I had helped build. I even felt a spark of pride thinking she might want to learn the business and perhaps join me someday. How utterly naive I was. While I saw a sister potentially reconnecting with her roots, she was calculating the restaurant's worth for entirely different reasons. The week before the fateful dinner, I noticed my parents having hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the room. I assumed they were planning something for my upcoming birthday. Diana arrived unannounced, claiming she just missed home, another rarity that should have raised my suspicions. The business was doing better than ever. We had just been featured in a prominent food magazine, and reservations were booked solid 2 months in advance. Everything seemed to be falling into place. I felt secure in my position and future. Trevor and I had even started looking at houses in the area, planning to finally put down permanent roots. The foundation of all these plans was my eventual ownership of Seaside Delights, a foundation about to be catastrophically ripped away. My parents invited Trevor and me to dinner at their house on a Sunday evening, our traditional day off from the restaurant. When I arrived and saw Diana's car in the driveway, I was surprised but not alarmed. My mother had prepared her special roast beef, usually reserved for celebrations, which should have been another clue that something significant was happening. "What's the occasion?" I asked cheerfully as we all sat down at the dining table. My father exchanged glances with my mother before clearing his throat. "We have some news to share with you all." I remember feeling a flutter of excitement. Perhaps they were finally ready to discuss a timeline for transferring the restaurant to me. Maybe they wanted to announce their retirement plans. Trevor squeezed my hand under the table, clearly thinking the same thing. "We've been doing a lot of thinking about the future," my mother continued, pouring more wine into her glass. "About what's best for everyone and the business." My father nodded. "Diana has been having a tough time in New York. The fashion industry is so unstable these days." Diana looked down at her plate, playing the part of the struggling artist perfectly. "Now I understand it was all calculated. So," my father continued casually, as if announcing the weather forecast, "we've decided to transfer ownership of Seaside Delights to Diana. The paperwork was finalized last week." The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't have been more shocked if he had slapped me across the face. My fork clattered onto my plate.
"What?"
I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "It's a great opportunity for Diana to have something stable," my mother added, as if this explained everything. "And she has such fresh ideas for the place." "Fresh ideas?" I echoed, still unable to process what I was hearing. "She hasn't worked a single day in the restaurant in her entire life." "That's not fair, Miranda," my father said sternly. "Diana has always shown interest. Visiting twice a year is showing interest?" My voice was rising now. "What about my 15 years of working there? What about all my sacrifices? What about the promises you made to me?" Trevor put his hand on my arm, trying to calm me, but I could see he was equally shocked. "We never explicitly promised you ownership," my mother said coolly. "You assumed that." The gaslighting was so blatant that Trevor couldn't stay silent. "With all due respect, Eleanor, that's not true. James told Miranda just last year that the restaurant would be in good hands with her someday. I was there." My father waved his hand dismissively. "We meant she would always have a place there. And she still does. Diana wants you to stay on as manager, Miranda." Diana finally spoke up, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I could really use your expertise, sis. Nothing has to change for you day to day." Except everything had changed. In an instant, my future had been stolen from me. Years of sacrifice rendered meaningless. "When were you planning to tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking. Or was I supposed to find out when Diana showed up with the keys? "We're telling you now," my father said, clearly annoyed by my reaction. "We thought you'd be more understanding. Diana needs this opportunity. You'll be fine. You have Trevor, a stable relationship." The implication was clear. Diana deserved the family business because she had failed at her career, while I deserved nothing because I had been loyal and successful. My punishment for years of dedication was to continue that dedication, but now as an employee of my younger sister. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. I couldn't eat. I barely spoke. Trevor attempted to advocate for me, asking practical questions about the transition that my parents deflected. Diana kept talking about her vision for the restaurant, including a complete rebranding and menu overhaul that would erase decades of tradition and my contributions. As we prepared to leave, I pulled my father aside for a private conversation in his study. "Dad, please tell me what's really going on. This doesn't make sense." He sighed heavily. "Miranda, you've always been the strong one, the responsible one. Diana needs this safety net more than you do." "So, I'm being punished for being reliable?" I asked incredulously. "Nobody's being punished," he said firmly. "It's just what's best for the family as a whole." "What about what's best for me? For the business I've helped build. You'll always have a job there. That's more security than most people get." His dismissal of my concerns made it clear. My feelings didn't matter. My contributions didn't matter. Only Diana's needs mattered. As Trevor and I were walking to our car, I overheard Diana on her phone in the garden, thinking she was alone. "Yes, it's done. They signed everything over," she was saying excitedly. "The developers will be thrilled, prime waterfront property. Once we clear the regulatory hurdles, we can start demolition by next year." My blood ran cold. Diana wasn't planning to run the restaurant. She was planning to sell it to developers, to destroy our family legacy and cash out. I froze, pulling Trevor to a stop so we could continue listening. "No, my sister doesn't suspect anything," Diana continued. "She thinks I actually want to run a restaurant." She laughed. "I know. Can you imagine me in an apron?" "No. Once the rezoning goes through, we'll announce the sale. Yes, I've been working on this for over a year. The developers needed someone in the family to take ownership first. My parents think I'm saving the business. They have no idea." Trevor had to physically guide me to the car as my legs threatened to give out. The betrayal was even worse than I had initially thought. This wasn't just about my parents favoring Diana. This was a calculated plan to dismantle everything our family had built for generations. The drive home was silent until Trevor finally spoke. "This is outrageous, Miranda. They can't do this to you." "They already have," I whispered. "We should fight this. There must be legal options." "Maybe," I said, though I felt hollowed out. "But first I need to process what just happened." That night was the longest of my life. I lay awake until dawn, replaying every conversation, every promise, every sacrifice I had made for seaside delights. By morning, my shock had begun to transform into something else: determination. If my family thought they could discard me so easily, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The week following the announcement was one of the most difficult periods of my life. I went through the motions at work, forcing smiles for customers who had no idea that the restaurant they loved was destined for destruction. Each familiar face, each regular customer greeting me by name, felt like another twist of the knife. These people trusted me, and soon their favorite gathering place would be replaced by luxury condos. I arranged a meeting with Whitney, the lawyer who had handled my grandfather's estate. I brought copies of any documents I could find that might help my case, including old letters from my grandfather about his wishes for the restaurant's future. Whitney's office was filled with maritime art, fitting for a lawyer in our coastal town. She listened patiently as I explained the situation, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "I'm sorry, Miranda," she said finally. "Without something in writing specifically promising you ownership, there's little legal recourse. Your parents had full ownership rights and were free to transfer them to whomever they chose." "What about my grandfather's will?" I asked desperately. "He wanted the restaurant to stay in the family." Whitney shuffled through some papers. "The will transferred ownership to your parents without specific conditions about future succession. It expressed his hope that the restaurant would remain a family business, but hopes aren't legally binding." "And what about Diana's plan to sell to developers? Can that be stopped?" "Once she has ownership, she can sell to whomever she chooses. The only potential hurdle would be zoning regulations if they want to build something other than a restaurant." I left Whitney's office feeling even more defeated. On my way back to the restaurant, I received a text from my mother. "Diana mentioned you might be upset. Remember, family comes first. We're all meeting with interior designers next week for the renovation." The audacity was breathtaking. They expected me to participate in the destruction of everything I had helped build. That afternoon, I overheard two staff members, Luis and Bethany, whispering in the kitchen. "Did you hear? Diana's taking over," Luis said. "Miranda's sister? The one who doesn't know a spatula from a spoon?" Bethany responded incredulously. "Apparently, she's bringing in a whole new concept. Modern fusion or something. What does that mean for us? For Miranda?" I cleared my throat and they jumped. "Sorry," I said, "but I'd rather you hear it from me than through rumors." I gathered the staff after closing and explained the situation, or at least the version I knew before overhearing Diana's phone call. I couldn't bring myself to tell them about the development plans yet, not until I had a strategy to fight back. "Nothing will change immediately," I assured them, though the words tasted bitter. "I'll still be managing day-to-day operations." Carlos, our head chef who had been with us for 20 years, looked heartbroken. "But it's always been you who would take over, Miranda. Everyone knows that." "Plans change," I said simply, not trusting myself to say more without breaking down. That night, Trevor came over with takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on my balcony overlooking the ocean, the same ocean view that made our property so valuable to developers. "I spoke to Whitney," I told him. "Legally, there's nothing I can do." Trevor's expression hardened. "Then maybe we should just leave. Start fresh somewhere else. You have the experience to open your own restaurant anywhere." The thought had crossed my mind. It would certainly be easier to walk away, to start over in a new town where every street corner didn't hold memories of my family and the restaurant. "Diana gave them something," I said suddenly, remembering a detail from my meeting with Whitney. "She convinced the lawyer to check the transfer documents more carefully, and there was a separate agreement. Diana gave my parents an all-expenses-paid 3-month cruise around the world. That's why they're so excited about retirement planning suddenly. They sold me out for a vacation." Trevor's face reflected my disgust. "That's why they can suddenly afford to retire? They traded your future for a cruise ship buffet." I nodded, a hollow laugh escaping me. 15 years of my life valued at less than 3 months on a boat. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The betrayal felt physical, like an illness spreading through my body. I kept thinking about all the customers who would lose their special place, all the employees who would lose their jobs, all the history that would be bulldozed away. The next day, Diana made her first appearance at the restaurant as the new owner. She waltzed in wearing a designer outfit entirely impractical for restaurant work, trailing an interior designer who kept talking about opening up the space and modernizing the dated aesthetic. Miranda. Diana called out as if we were still on good terms. Come give input on these color schemes. I gritted my teeth and joined them, watching as they discussed tearing down the wall of customer photos, the heart and soul of our restaurant. We can't remove that, I said firmly. Those photos represent decades of customer loyalty. Diana waved her hand dismissively. It's cluttered and old-fashioned. We need clean lines, Instagram-worthy backdrops. Those photos are why people come back year after year. They bring their children to see their wedding photos on our wall. The designer looked uncomfortable, catching the tension between us. Well, I'm thinking of the future customers, not the past ones, Diana said with finality. Oh, and I'll need the office today. I have meetings with some business associates. Those business associates turned out to be representatives from Coastal Prime Development, the company I'd overheard her mentioning on the phone. They arrived in sleek suits, carrying portfolios, barely glancing at the restaurant itself. They weren't there for the food or atmosphere. They were there for the land. I pretended to be busy wiping down tables near the office, straining to hear snippets of their conversation. Rezoning shouldn't be an issue with the right incentives. Waterfront condos command premium prices, timeline of 18 months to breaking ground. Each word was another nail in the coffin of my family's legacy. As the days passed, Diana's visits became more frequent. She would arrive late, make uninformed decisions, and leave early. She dismissed customer complaints, ignored staff concerns, and spent most of her time on the phone with her developer friends. The staff quickly realized that she had no idea how to run a restaurant. She ordered expensive ingredients that spoiled because she didn't understand storage requirements. She changed operating hours without updating our website, leading to confused and angry customers. She hired a friend as a consultant who suggested we replace our signature clam chowder, the recipe passed down from my grandfather, with a deconstructed seafood bisque foam. Through it all, I continued to work, fixing her mistakes behind the scenes, soothing irritated customers, reassuring stressed staff. Why did I stay? Partly because I couldn't abandon the people who depended on me. Partly because I needed time to figure out my next move. And partly because each day gave me more insight into Diana's plans, information I might need later. My parents called occasionally, asking how things were going with Diana. When I tried to express concerns about her management style or decisions, they brushed me off. She's finding her footing, my mother would say. You need to be more supportive. She's running the business into the ground, I countered during one particularly heated call. You're just resistant to change, my father replied. Diana has a fresh perspective. They were currently on the first leg of their cruise, enjoying the Mediterranean while their eldest daughter's life imploded and their family business hurtled toward destruction. Trevor became increasingly concerned about my well-being. I had lost weight, wasn't sleeping, and found little joy in anything. One night, after I spent an hour ranting about Diana's latest affront, firing our beloved hostess of 12 years because she was too old for our new image, Trevor took my hands in his. Miranda, I can't watch you torture yourself like this anymore. We need to leave. I've been offered a research position in Seattle.
Come with me.
We can start fresh, away from all this toxicity. His offer was tempting. Escape, a new beginning, a life free from daily reminders of betrayal. I can't, I said finally. Not yet. If I leave now, Diana wins. Everything my grandfather built, everything I've contributed, will be erased. I can't let that happen without a fight. Trevor studied my face. Okay, he said finally. Then we fight. But we need a real plan, not just enduring each day's fresh hell. He was right. It was time to stop reacting and start acting. That night, for the first time since the announcement, I slept soundly. The path forward wasn't clear yet, but I had made a decision. I would not be a victim in this story. I would not quietly disappear. The next morning, I woke up with clarity and purpose. My family had betrayed me, but I still had my knowledge, my relationships, and my determination. If Diana wanted to play hardball, she would discover that her older sister knew the game far better than she did. I just need to be patient and methodical. If you're up against someone who will destroy something beautiful for profit, you have to be willing to fight with everything you have. That's exactly what I intended to do. 2 weeks after Diana took over, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by notes, documents, and my laptop. Trevor brought me coffee and sat down across from me. "Okay, so what's the plan?" he asked. I'd been strategizing day and night, considering every angle. This wasn't just about getting even with my family anymore, it was about saving a community institution and protecting the livelihoods of people who depended on it. First, we need to understand exactly what Diana and these developers are planning, I explained. Knowledge is power. Through careful online research and conversations with friends in local government, I discovered that coastal prime development had a troubling history. They'd purchased 3 other historic buildings in neighboring towns, promised preservation and minimal changes to secure permits, then systematically demolished everything once approvals were in place. They specialized in identifying properties with zoning, flexibility, and exploiting loopholes. "They've done this before," I told Trevor, showing him news articles about community outrage over broken promises. "And Diana is their perfect front person, a family member with legal ownership but no emotional connection to the property." The more I investigated, the clearer the picture became. Diana needed to maintain the appearance of running the restaurant while quietly working through the rezoning process and regulatory hurdles. Once those were cleared, the sale would be announced as a difficult but necessary business decision. I'd been listening for days to your stories of family betrayal, and I realize we're all seeking the same thing: justice when the people closest to us let us down. If you're finding my journey resonates with your own experiences, consider subscribing to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when family loyalty becomes a one-way street. The next part of my plan shows exactly how preparation meets opportunity when you refuse to be victimized. Let's continue with how I turn the tables. My first strategic move was to secure copies of all business records, customer databases, vendor contracts, and our secret recipes before Diana could restrict my access. I worked late one night, methodically backing up everything to external drives and securing them off-site. These weren't just administrative documents, they were the operational lifeblood of the restaurant. Next, I reached out to Samantha Kent, an influential food critic who had been a friend of my grandfather's. We met for coffee at a small cafe far from Seaside Delights. "I've heard rumors," Samantha said after we exchanged pleasantries. "People are saying Diana has big changes planned." "Bigger than anyone realizes," I replied, and shared what I knew about the development plans. Samantha's expression darkened. "Your grandfather would be heartbroken. That restaurant is part of this town's identity." "I know. That's why I need your help. Not just for me, but for everything Seaside Delights represents." Samantha agreed to keep her ear to the ground and hold off on reviewing the restaurant under Diana's management. "Timing is everything in this business," she said with a knowing smile. My third step was more difficult emotionally. I began reaching out to other restaurant owners in town, people I'd considered competitors for years. I met with Frank from Harbor House and Sophia from Ocean Blue, explaining the developer's pattern of targeting waterfront properties. "Today it's Seaside Delights, but tomorrow it could be your restaurants," I warned them. "These developers won't stop with one property." Frank leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "We've been competitors for 20 years, Miranda. Why should I help you now?" "Because this isn't about competition anymore," I replied. "It's about preserving the character of this town. Do we want to be known for our historic waterfront restaurants, or as another generic condo development with chain restaurants on the ground floor?" By the end of the week, I had formed a coalition of local business owners committed to fighting inappropriate development along our historic waterfront. We scheduled a meeting with the town planning board to discuss strengthening preservation regulations. Meanwhile, I continued working at Seaside Delights, documenting every mistake Diana made. I created a detailed dossier showing her lack of qualifications to run the business, health code violations she didn't address, customer complaints she ignored, staff concerns she dismissed. I wasn't being petty. I was building a case. I also identified key staff members I could trust absolutely: Carlos the chef, Bethany the bar manager, Luis the head server, and Margaret the bookkeeper. These were people who had been with the restaurant for years, who understood its value beyond the financial. I need to be honest with you, I told them during a private meeting at my apartment. Diana isn't planning to revitalize the restaurant. She's planning to sell it to developers who will tear it down for condos. Their reactions ranged from shock to outrage. Carlos slammed his fist on the table, his face red with anger. This place is my home. I've cooked here longer than anywhere else in my life. I know, I said gently. And I'm going to fight this, but I need your help. They all agreed without hesitation. We established a secure communication channel and began coordinating our efforts. Carlos would document kitchen issues, Bethany would track customer feedback, Luis would monitor staff concerns, and Margaret would watch for financial irregularities. The most challenging part of my plan involved getting concrete evidence of Diana's arrangement with the developers. I needed proof, not just overheard conversations. The opportunity came when Diana left her laptop open in the office while meeting with customers. Margaret texted me immediately, and I slipped into the office, finding emails between Diana and Jeffrey Wilson, CEO of Coastal Prime Development. The correspondence confirmed everything: the plan to demolish the restaurant, the timeline for development, even the amount Diana would receive once the deal closed: $5 million. I took photos of the screen with my phone, my hands shaking with a mixture of vindication and grief. The betrayal was even more calculated than I'd imagined. That night, I shared everything with Trevor. "This is solid evidence," he said, reviewing the photos. "But what's your endgame here, Miranda? Legal action?" I shook my head. The transfer was legal, even if it was morally wrong. No, I'm going to beat Diana at her own game. Over the next week, I met with a commercial real estate agent and a small business attorney. I explored locations for a potential new restaurant, reviewed lease terms, and began drafting a business plan. If Diana could discard our family's legacy, I would create my own. I also connected with a local environmental group concerned about overdevelopment along the coastline. They had successfully delayed several projects through regulatory challenges and public pressure campaigns. Their leader, Elena, became a valuable ally. "Waterfront development affects ecosystems and public access," Elena explained. "We can request environmental impact studies that could delay their plans by months or even years." Another key component of my strategy involved the local business council. As Seaside Delight's manager, I had represented the restaurant at meetings for years. Diana hadn't bothered to attend a single one since taking ownership. I used these relationships to raise subtle concerns about potential changes to the historic waterfront district. Throughout this planning phase, I maintained a perfectly professional demeanor at work. I never criticized Diana publicly, never revealed what I knew about her plans. This restraint was difficult, but necessary. The element of surprise would be crucial. Diana, meanwhile, grew increasingly confident. She began making more dramatic changes, replacing our traditional paper menus with QR codes, removing classic dishes that had been favorites for decades, installing garish neon lighting in our rustic dining room. Each change eroded the restaurant's character and alienated longtime customers. She also began bringing the developers around more frequently, introducing them as consultants. They would measure spaces, take photos, and make notes while barely acknowledging the actual restaurant operations. The final piece of my plan fell into place when I discovered that the annual Coastal Heritage Festival was approaching, an event that typically brought thousands of visitors to our waterfront. Diana, unfamiliar with local traditions, had no idea of its significance. This would be the perfect moment to launch my countermove. I scheduled my strategic resignation for the day before the festival, when Diana would have no time to find replacements for the staff who would leave with me. I secured a temporary location for a pop-up restaurant featuring Seaside Delight's classic recipes I had legitimately developed myself over the years. The ethical dimensions of my plan weighed on me. Was I becoming as calculating as Diana? Was revenge clouding my judgment? I spent a sleepless night wrestling with these questions. This isn't just about revenge, Trevor reassured me when I shared my doubts. It's about preserving something valuable that would otherwise be destroyed. It's about standing up for yourself and everyone else affected by Diana's selfishness. He was right. This wasn't just about my hurt feelings or wounded pride. It was about protecting a community institution, standing up for loyal employees, and honoring my grandfather's legacy. If that also happened to teach my family a lesson about consequences, so be it. By the end of the month, every aspect of my plan was in place. I had secured financing for my new venture, coordinated with trusted staff, gathered irrefutable evidence, built a coalition of community support, and identified the perfect moment to act. All that remained was execution. The night before I planned to make my move, I visited my grandfather's grave. I placed fresh flowers beside his headstone and sat there in the quiet evening light. "I don't know if what I'm doing is what you would have wanted," I said softly, "but I'm trying to protect what you built. I hope you'd understand." A gentle breeze rustled the trees overhead, and I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the same determination and integrity my grandfather had shown throughout his life. I returned home and called Trevor. "It's time," I said simply. "I'm with you," he replied without hesitation. "All the way." Tomorrow would change everything. I was nervous but resolute. Diana and my parents thought they could discard me without consequences. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Part 6. The execution of the plan. The morning of the Coastal Heritage Festival dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for what would become one of the most dramatic days in our town's recent history. I arrived at Seaside Delights earlier than usual, dressed professionally, but with a box of personal items from my office, a small tip-off to my observant staff that today was different. Diana arrived an hour late, as had become her habit, looking harried. "The festival is going to be a nightmare for parking," she complained, not even saying good morning. "Can we just close for the day? It's not worth the hassle." I kept my expression neutral. "The festival brings in our highest revenue day of the year. We've been fully booked for months." She sighed dramatically.
"Fine.
"Just handle it like you always do." Those would be the last instructions she gave me as an employee. At precisely noon, when the restaurant was at its busiest with festival attendees, I gathered the staff in the kitchen. Diana was in her office with 2 representatives from Coastal Prime Development, reviewing floor plans for the future condos. "It's time," I said simply. Carlos nodded, removing his chef's coat. Bethany untied her apron. Luis and the other servers placed their order pads on the counter. One by one, 14 staff members. Every person working that day except the newest dishwasher removed their uniforms or name tags. I knocked on Diana's office door and entered without waiting for a response. The developers quickly shuffled their papers out of sight, but not before I glimpsed a rendering of a modern glass tower where our restaurant currently stood. "What is it, Miranda?" "We're in a meeting," Diana said impatiently. "I just wanted to inform you that I'm resigning, effective immediately," I said calmly, placing my resignation letter on her desk. As are Carlos, Bethany, Luis, Margaret, and 10 other staff members. Diana's face went from annoyed to shocked to panicked in seconds.
"What?"
"You can't all leave. We have a full restaurant." "Yes, we do," I agreed. "A restaurant full of customers expecting the quality and service Seaside Delights has always provided. I wish you luck maintaining that without a chef, servers, or bar staff." One of the developers, a sleek man in an expensive suit, frowned. "Diana, what's going on?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "Just a staff issue. Miranda, we can discuss this later. You can't just walk out during service." "Actually, I can. I'm no longer an employee here. But don't worry, I've alerted Jason from the Gazette. He's outside ready to document this historic moment for the local paper. I believe his headline is Mass Exodus at Beloved Local Restaurant Under New Management." The color drained from Diana's face. "You wouldn't." "I already have," I replied, then turned to the developers. "Gentlemen, You might want to consider the implications for your project when the community learns that a historic local business was purchased under false pretenses as a front for luxury condo development. The older developer stood up abruptly. Diana, you assured us this transition would be smooth and discreet. It will be, Diana said desperately. Miranda is just being dramatic. I smiled politely. I've never been dramatic a day in my life. Ask anyone in this town. I'm known for being practical and straightforward, which is why people tend to believe me. With that, I walked out. The entire staff was waiting in the dining area, where confused customers were beginning to wonder why service had stopped. Carlos stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the packed restaurant. We apologize for the interruption. After 15 years of dedicated service, our manager Miranda has been forced to resign due to the new owner's decision to sell this historic restaurant to condo developers. A collective gasp went through the dining room. Many of these people were locals who had celebrated countless special occasions at Seaside Delights. We, the staff, are leaving with her, Carlos continued. But we invite you all to join us at Harbor Pier in 1 hour, where we'll be serving Seaside Delight's classic recipes at a pop-up restaurant for the duration of the festival. Diana burst out of the office, her face contorted with rage. You can't do this. Those recipes belong to the restaurant. Actually, I corrected her calmly. Many of those recipes were developed by me and are not proprietary to the business. I've had my attorney verify this. The customers were now openly staring, some recording the confrontation on their phones. Jason from the Gazette was scribbling notes furiously. Everyone out. Diana screamed at the staff. You're all fired. We've already quit, Bethany pointed out helpfully. That's what this whole scene is about. As we filed out, leaving Diana alone with a restaurant full of unserved customers and no staff, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I was taking action rather than just reacting to my family's betrayal. The scene at Harbor Pier an hour later was remarkable. We had arranged for several food trucks to park there, with Carlos supervising the preparation of simplified versions of our most popular dishes. Word spread quickly through the festival, and a line formed before we even began serving. Jason's article appeared online that afternoon with the headline, Family drama boils over at Seaside Delights. Staff walks out after learning of plans to demolish historic restaurant. The story included quotes from longtime customers expressing outrage and photos of our impromptu pop-up restaurant with its massive lines. By evening, local TV news had picked up the story. I gave a brief, composed interview, stating only facts. After 15 years of managing Seaside Delights, I discovered that the new owner plans to sell to developers who will demolish the restaurant for condominiums. I felt our loyal customers and staff deserved to know the truth. Diana's attempts at damage control only made things worse. In her own interview, she called me disgruntled and denied any concrete plans to sell, but stumbled when asked directly about her meetings with Coastal Prime Development. The reporter had done his homework and knew exactly who the men in her office had been. The fallout was swift and severe. Customers canceled reservations. Suppliers, many of whom had personal relationships with me, became mysteriously unavailable to fill orders. The health department, responding to anonymous concerns, conducted a surprise inspection and found several violations that had accumulated under Diana's negligent management. Within days, my parents cut their cruise short and flew home to deal with the crisis. They arrived to find Seaside Delights operating with a skeleton crew of inexperienced new hires, serving a handful of customers in a dining room designed for hundreds. Meanwhile, our pop-up restaurant had evolved into Coastal Heritage, a temporary establishment that had taken over an empty waterfront space. We served simplified versions of Seaside's classics plus new dishes I had been developing for years, but never had the freedom to introduce. Every table was filled, with waiting lists extending hours. The community response was overwhelming. Regular customers brought us kitchen equipment, decorations, and words of encouragement. Local farmers and fishermen, many of whom I had built relationships with over years, offered us their best products at favorable terms. Other restaurant owners from our coalition lent staff during their off hours. 2 weeks after our dramatic exit, the town council held an emergency meeting about waterfront development. The room was packed with concerned citizens, many wearing "Save Our Waterfront" buttons that Elena's environmental group had distributed. Diana and my parents attended, as did representatives from Coastal Prime Development. I sat with Trevor and our coalition of business owners. The council president opened by addressing the elephant in the room. We've become aware of plans that may significantly alter the character of our historic waterfront, including the potential demolition of Seaside Delights, a town landmark for 50 years. Jeffrey Wilson from Coastal Prime stepped forward with a slick presentation about revitalization and modern amenities, promising that their luxury condos would bring wealthy new residents and tax revenue. When he finished, Elena presented the environmental impact concerns. Frank detailed the economic importance of maintaining authentic local businesses rather than generic luxury developments. I spoke about my grandfather's vision and the community role Seaside Delights had played for generations. The meeting lasted for hours, with dozens of residents speaking passionately about preserving the town's character. Diana looked increasingly uncomfortable as speaker after speaker referenced the restaurant's importance and my family's betrayal of community trust. The council concluded by announcing a 6-month moratorium on waterfront development permits while they reviewed zoning regulations, effectively halting Coastal Prime's plans before they could begin. As we left the meeting, I overheard Jeffrey Wilson telling Diana, "This isn't what you promised. We're reconsidering our position." The next day, my mother called, asking to meet. I suggested a public place, a cafe downtown, unwilling to risk a private conversation that could be denied later. When she arrived, she looked tired and older somehow. "Your father and I had no idea about Diana's plans to sell," she began. "I find it hard to believe," I replied. "The developers have been meeting at the restaurant for weeks." "We thought they were consultants for the rebranding," she insisted. Diana told us she wanted to modernize, not demolish. Whether this was true or just damage control, I couldn't tell. But it hardly mattered now. "The restaurant is failing without you and the staff," she admitted. "Your father had to come out of retirement to cook, and I'm hostessing. Diana has no idea what she's doing." "That was apparent from day one," I said. "Which is why your decision to give her the business made no sense." She looked down at her coffee. "We thought we were helping her. She presented it as her dream to continue the family business. While I was actually doing that for 15 years, I pointed out. My mother had no response to this obvious truth. By the 1-month mark, the contrast between the two restaurants couldn't have been more stark. Seaside Delights was barely operational, its reputation in tatters. Coastal Heritage was thriving, with food critics praising both our classic recipes and innovative new offerings. Diana's development deal was officially dead. Coastal Prime issued a statement announcing they were no longer exploring opportunities in our town, a polite retreat after the public relations disaster and regulatory roadblocks. The revenge I had planned had succeeded beyond my expectations. I had exposed the truth, saved the waterfront from inappropriate development, created a successful new business, and demonstrated my value to everyone who had underestimated me. But this wasn't the end of the story. The most difficult confrontation was yet to come. 6 weeks after our dramatic departure from Seaside Delights, I was in the kitchen at Coastal Heritage, tasting Carlos's new seafood stew, when Bethany burst in. "Miranda, Diana's here," she said urgently. "And she looks furious." I wiped my hands on a towel and straightened my shoulders. I'd been expecting this confrontation, though not necessarily in my busy restaurant during the dinner rush. Diana stood in the center of our dining room, scanning the space with obvious jealousy. Every table was filled with happy customers enjoying their meals. The walls were already adorned with new photos, celebrations that had taken place at Coastal Heritage in its short existence. "Can I help you?" I asked calmly, approaching her. She spun around, her face flushed with anger. "You've ruined everything," she shouted, loud enough that conversations throughout the restaurant halted. "Are you happy now?" "The restaurant is failing, the development deal is dead, and Mom and Dad are furious with me. Trevor emerged from the back office, positioning himself nearby, close enough to intervene if needed, but giving me space to handle this myself. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, I suggested, gesturing toward my office.
No.
Diana snapped. You humiliated me publicly.
You turned the whole town against me.
You destroyed my chance at financial security. Your financial security was going to come at the cost of our family's legacy and this town's heritage, I replied, keeping my voice level. You are willing to destroy something precious to many people just for a payday. Customers were openly watching now, some recording on their phones. Diana either didn't notice or didn't care. It was mine to do with as I pleased, she insisted. Mom and Dad gave it to me. Yes, they did, I acknowledged. That was their choice, and your choice was to sell it off rather than honor its history. Not everyone wants to spend their life in a kitchen smelling like fish. Diana shouted. Some of us have bigger dreams. Then you should have pursued those dreams honestly instead of manipulating our parents and betraying our family. Diana's face contorted. You think you're so perfect, don't you? The responsible daughter, the keeper of tradition.
It's always been about you.
Grandpa's favorite, Dad's right hand. I never stood a chance in this family. This unexpected vulnerability momentarily caught me off guard. Before I could respond, the front door opened again, and my parents walked in. That's enough, Diana, my father said firmly. You're making a scene? Diana whirled to face them. Of course you're taking her side again. You always do. My mother stepped forward. We're not taking sides. We're trying to fix the mess our family has become. The restaurant remained silent, every diner watching our family drama unfold like a live theater performance. Under different circumstances, I might have been mortified, but there was something fitting about having witnesses to this long-overdue confrontation. There's nothing to fix, Diana said bitterly. Miranda got what she wanted. She has her own restaurant now, and Seaside is dying. Happy ending for everyone. That's not what I wanted. I corrected her. I wanted to continue the legacy our grandfather built. I wanted to honor his work and the community he served. I wanted the family business to remain in the family, not be sold to developers. My father looked around the bustling restaurant, then back at me with a mixture of pride and regret. You've done well here, Miranda. In just a few weeks. Don't compliment her. Diana interrupted. This is all spite. She did this to get back at us. Trevor finally spoke up. Miranda did this because you left her no choice. You took away her livelihood and future without warning or reason. My father raised his hand. There's something you both need to know. He pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. After all this happened, I went looking through your grandfather's original will and found something we'd overlooked. He unfolded the paper and read aloud. While I leave Seaside Delights to my son James and his wife Eleanor, it is my express wish that the restaurant eventually pass to the family member who demonstrates true dedication to its values and tradition. A restaurant is more than a business. It is a home for memories, a keeper of traditions, a gathering place for the community. Its stewardship should fall to the person who understands this truth most deeply. The silence that followed was profound. My mother wiped away a tear. We ignored his wishes, she admitted quietly. We thought we were being fair by helping Diana establish security, but we were wrong. We should have honored your grandfather's intentions. Diana scoffed. So now what? You want to take back the restaurant and give it to precious Miranda? No, my father said firmly. What's done is done legally. But we need to talk about the future of Seaside Delights. It's failing without Miranda and the staff. At this rate, it will close within months regardless of any development plans. I looked around at the restaurant I had built from nothing in just a few weeks, the loyal staff who had followed me, the customers who had supported us, the new traditions we were already creating. Seaside Delights had been my past, but coastal heritage was my future. I don't want Seaside back, I said finally. This is my restaurant now. I built it my way, without family obligation or expectations. Diana looked shocked. Then what do you want? Accountability, I answered honestly. recognition of the hurt you all caused, and assurance that Seaside Delights won't be destroyed, even if it changes. My mother stepped forward tentatively. We were wrong, Miranda. We took you for granted. We assumed you'd always be there no matter how we treated you. We're truly sorry. Coming from my mother, who rarely admitted error, this was significant. My father nodded in agreement, his eyes reflecting genuine remorse. Diana, however, wasn't ready for reconciliation. This doesn't change anything. The restaurant is still mine legally. Yes, I agreed. And what will you do with it now? Your development deal is dead. You have no staff. You have no experience. What's your plan? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Diana's face. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. Without the development deal, she was stuck with a failing restaurant she didn't know how to run. I don't know, she admitted finally. An unexpected wave of compassion washed over me. Diana had always been the favored child, the one with bigger dreams and fewer responsibilities. Perhaps in her way, she had felt as trapped by family expectations as I had, expected to be brilliant and special while I was expected to be reliable and present. We should continue this conversation privately, I suggested, suddenly aware again of our audience. Carlos can handle things here for the evening. We moved to my office, a small but organized space that reflected my management style. Trevor excused himself to oversee the restaurant, giving my family privacy. Once the door closed, the facade Diana had been maintaining crumbled completely. I'm ruined, she said, collapsing into a chair. The restaurant is failing. My fashion career is dead. The developers have backed out. I have nothing. Despite everything, it was difficult to see my sister in such despair. The anger that had fueled me for weeks began to give way to something more complicated. Why did you do it, Diana? I asked quietly. Why the secrecy? The manipulation? She looked up, tears streaming down her face. Because I knew everyone would take your side. You're the responsible one, the perfect daughter. I needed something that was mine, something that would finally make me financially independent. So you took the one thing that mattered most to me? I didn't think it mattered to you, she said, and I could see she genuinely believed this. I thought you stayed out of obligation, not passion. You always seemed so dutiful about it. My parents exchanged glances, clearly recognizing their role in this misunderstanding. We may have contributed to that impression, my father admitted. We always asked so much of you, Miranda, without acknowledging your love for the restaurant. We took your dedication for granted. The truth of his words struck me deeply. I had always expressed my love for Seaside Delights through work, through improvement, through dedication, not through words. Perhaps in their own way, my family had never fully understood what the restaurant meant to me. What happens now? My mother asked, looking from me to Diana. It was the question we all needed to answer. The future of our family and our family's legacy hung in the balance. 3 months after that emotional confrontation in my office, I stood on the deck of the newly renovated Seaside Delights, watching the sunset over the harbor. The restaurant was closed for a private event, its official reopening celebration after weeks of renovation. The path to this moment had been neither simple nor easy. After our family confrontation, Diana returned to New York, needing space to process everything that had happened. My parents, facing the reality of a failing restaurant, approached me with a business proposition. They would buy back Seaside Delights from Diana and sell it to me at fair market value, not as a gift, but as a legitimate business transaction. Diana, desperate to extract herself from a situation she was ill-equipped to handle, agreed. She signed the restaurant back to our parents in exchange for a much smaller but still significant settlement. Enough to restart her fashion career on a more realistic scale. I secured a business loan, using Coastal Heritage's remarkable success as proof of my management capabilities. The purchase was completed with proper contracts, lawyers, and business terms, no family promises or unwritten expectations. The plan I developed was ambitious but practical. I would operate both restaurants under a new parent company, Sinclair Hospitality Group, named after my grandfather. Seaside Delights would return to its traditional roots with some thoughtful updates, while Coastal Heritage would continue its more contemporary approach. Different concepts, different locations, shared values. I hired Diana as a consultant for the aesthetic redesign of Seaside's interior, a small olive branch that acknowledged her genuine talent for design while maintaining clear business boundaries. She worked remotely, submitting concepts that I could approve or modify, an arrangement that allowed her to contribute without the friction of daily interaction while our relationship slowly healed. My parents asked if they could work in the restaurants to better understand the business they had taken for granted. I agreed, but with conditions. They would start in entry-level positions, learn every aspect of operations, and receive no special treatment. My father worked alongside Carlos in the kitchen, while my mother joined the host staff. The experience proved humbling and enlightening for them both. Trevor proposed the week before Seaside's renovation began. He got down on one knee on the empty restaurant floor, surrounded by drop cloths and paint cans. "I want to build a life with someone who fights for what matters," he said. "Someone who doesn't give up when things get hard." I said yes immediately. Now, as I looked around at the renovated restaurant, I felt a sense of completion. We had restored the wall of customer photos, but presented them in a more elegant way. We had updated the kitchen with modern equipment while preserving my grandfather's original recipes. We had honored the past while embracing the future. The staff moved efficiently through the space, preparing for the evening's guests. Carlos directed the kitchen with his usual precision. Bethany arranged the bar with meticulous care. Luis trained new servers with patient expertise. The front door opened and my parents entered. They looked different somehow, more grounded, less entitled. Working in the restaurants had changed their perspective. "Everything looks beautiful, Miranda," my mother said, genuinely impressed. "The reservations are booked solid for the next 3 months," my father added proudly. Trevor joined us, wrapping his arm around my waist. "Ready for the big night, boss?" I smiled. Almost. Just waiting for one more person. As if on cue, the door opened again, and Diana walked in. She had returned from New York just yesterday, her first visit home since the confrontation. She looked more mature somehow, her designer outfit more understated than the flashy styles she used to favor. "The design looks even better in person," she said, looking around appreciatively. "You implemented my concepts perfectly." "With some practical modifications," I acknowledged. "But yes, your vision helped shape the space." An awkward silence fell between us, months of hurt and betrayal not easily erased despite our tentative steps toward reconciliation. Diana broke the silence first. "I have news," she said. "My new collection launched last week. It's small, self-funded, practical. Nothing like the grandiose plans I used to have. But it's mine, built honestly." "Congratulations," I said sincerely. "That's wonderful. I'm also looking for more permanent work," she continued hesitantly. "Fashion is still feast or famine. I was wondering if your offer still stands." Months ago, in a moment of unexpected compassion during our confrontation, I had suggested that Diana could learn the restaurant business properly, starting from the bottom, no shortcuts. At the time, she had dismissed the idea outright. "Are you serious about learning the business?" I asked. "Really learning it from the ground up?" She nodded. "I realized something these past months. I was jealous of your connection to Grandpa's legacy. I wanted it without earning it. But watching you build something new while still honoring tradition, it made me see what I've been missing." I considered her request carefully. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. But family, despite its capacity to hurt us deeply, also holds the potential for extraordinary growth and redemption. "We start servers at the 3-month training program," I said finally. "No exceptions, no shortcuts, no special treatment. You'd report to Luis, not to me." Diana smiled, a genuine smile free from the competitiveness that had characterized our relationship for so long. "I can work with that." As guests began to arrive for the reopening celebration, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past few months. What had begun as a devastating betrayal had transformed into an unexpected opportunity, not just to prove my worth, but to redefine my relationship with my family and my own ambitions. I had lost a promised inheritance, but gained something more valuable: a business built on my own terms, a family beginning to heal through honest communication and appropriate boundaries, and a future with a partner who supported me unconditionally. My grandfather's portrait now hung in a place of honor near the entrance, his kind eyes seeming to approve of the changes and continuity alike. Beside it was framed the key passage from his will about true dedication to the restaurant's values. It served as both a tribute to him and a reminder of the principles that would guide us going forward. Later that evening, as the celebration was in full swing, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The harbor lights twinkled on the water, the same view that had captivated my grandfather decades ago when he first opened Seaside Delights. Trevor joined me, handing me a glass of champagne. "To new beginnings," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "And to fighting for what matters," I added. Inside, my family waited, imperfect, complicated, but mine nonetheless. We were learning, slowly and sometimes painfully, how to rebuild trust and establish healthier relationships. Not through blind loyalty or unquestioning forgiveness, but through accountability, boundaries, and genuine effort to understand each other. The restaurant business my grandfather built would continue, though in ways he might never have imagined. Both Seaside Delights and Coastal Heritage would thrive under my leadership, each honoring his legacy in its own way. And perhaps someday, when the time was right, I would pass these businesses to someone who demonstrated that same deep understanding of what a restaurant truly means to a community. For now, though, I was exactly where I needed to be, standing on my own strength, surrounded by people who had earned their places in my life, building something meaningful that was truly mine. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I'd love to know if you've ever had to stand up to family for what was rightfully yours. Did you find, as I did, that sometimes the greatest gift is being forced to create something entirely new? Please like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more family drama and revenge stories, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Remember that sometimes what feels like betrayal can actually be the universe redirecting you to where you truly belong. Thank you for listening, and I hope my story gives strength to anyone facing their own family battles right now.